Ariane Group unveiled SUSIE, or the Smart Upper Stage for Innovative Exploration Spacecraft, during the International Astronautical Congress held in Paris. SUSIE is an entirely reusable upper stage vehicle designed to carry out crewed and uncrewed missions to low Earth orbits. SUSIE, with a length of 12 meters and a diameter of 5 meters, is designed to be spacious enough to accommodate up to 5 astronauts or 40 cubic meters of cargo. At 7,000 kilograms, its payload capacity is also sizable. The 25-ton spacecraft will be able to fly atop the upcoming Ariane 64 variant, as well as on launchers of the following generations. The rockets will not require any modifications for cargo flights, but will require some modifications for crewed missions. After its mission, SUSIE would come back to Earth for a soft landing and could be repurposed for future flights. SUSIE will employ an integrated launch abort system that will allow flight termination at any point during the mission, including the powered vertical descent. Technically, SUSIE is more like a large SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle than a small Starship. However, one of the most striking elements of SUSIE is its capacity to land propulsively, much like Starship rockets. Moreover, just like Starships, SUSIE will also perform a belly flop maneuver before landing. But SUSIE is significantly less powerful and approximately 1/4 the size of the giant 50-meter-tall Starship upper stage. SUSIE is extremely flexible and is designed to be able to conduct numerous types of missions in space. The spacecraft can carry out missions including delivering resources to space stations, inspecting and upgrading satellites, and facilitating human in-orbit activities. SUSIE could also bring payloads of more than 7 tons back to Earth. With the addition of a space transfer module, SUSIE might someday be used for trips to the moon. The module will provide the power, propulsion, and air supply needed by the crew. Ariane Group will present the SUSIE spacecraft concept to European Space Agency member states later this year for consideration. NASA's Artemis-1 Space Launch System rocket passed a critical fueling test on September 21. The day-long test at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39B involved filling the SLS core and upper stage with liquid hydrogen and oxygen propellants, carrying out engine bleed and thermal conditioning on the RS-25 engines, and a pre-press test of the liquid hydrogen tank. The tests were aimed to confirm that changes such as the replacement of seals and a new kinder and gentler loading procedure would prevent hydrogen leaks seen during a launch attempt on September 3. Early in the test on Wednesday, controllers reported a liquid hydrogen leak in the tail service mast umbilical, where liquid hydrogen is transferred from ground systems to the core stage. However, by warming up the quick disconnect and allowing the connection to reseat, the team was able to lower the leak rate to acceptable levels. From there, the fueling operations continued, filling core and upper stage propellant tanks with cryogenic liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The rocket was then subjected to a 1-hour final pre-pressurization test of the core stage liquid hydrogen tank, during which the tank's pressure was raised to the level it would experience right before launch. NASA said at the conclusion of the test that they had met all of their objectives, and teams will examine the data from the test, as well as the weather and other factors, before determining readiness to proceed to the next launch opportunity. NASA is currently targeting September 27 as the launch date for Artemis-1, with a possible backup date of October 2. Rocket Lab hosted an Investor Day and Neutron development update at the Intrepid Air, Sea and Space Museum in New York City on September 21. During the event, Rocket Lab founder and CEO Peter Beck and members of the company's executive leadership team gave a series of presentations, including an update on the progress of the reusable Neutron launch vehicle development. Let's discuss the key takeaways from the event. Neutron's latest rendering looks slightly different from what we've seen before, while the general outline remains the same as the previous rendering revealed at the end of last year. Neutron's first stage has a tapered profile and aerodynamic control surfaces, such as canards and landing legs that serve as rear lifting surfaces. Neutron will have a fairing that doesn't separate from the rocket during launch, but opens in 2 parts. The previous Neutron fairing design had 4 fairing panels. Neutron will be powered by in-house designed and manufactured Archimedes engines. The engine will use liquid methane and oxygen propellants in an oxygen-rich staged combustion cycle. NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi was announced as the Archimedes engine test facility by Rocket Lab. Neutron's first stage will be 42.8 meters tall and 7 meters wide and will be powered by 9 Archimedes engines, whereas the 11.5 meters tall second stage, with a payload capacity of 15 tons, will feature a single Archimedes engine. Rocket Lab will also bring substantial investment and activity to Wallops Island in Virginia, the location of Neutron's first launch site, as well as production and operational facilities. Rocket Lab is on track to launch the first Neutron rocket from Wallops Island in 2024. Neutron rocket hardware was revealed for the first time during the event, including a full-scale section of carbon fiber tank structure and a full-scale Archimedes engine model. Details and images of Neutron's potential crew capsule design were also revealed during the event, providing an exclusive look at how Neutron could enable human spaceflight in the future. Wednesday's event also highlighted Rocket Lab's Electron rocket's position as the leading dedicated small satellite launcher. An Electron rocket is currently en route to NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in preparation for the company's first launch from American soil. The mission, that will launch 3 Hawkeye 360 satellites into low Earth orbit, is scheduled for December 2022. You may watch the Rocket Lab Investor Day presentation from the link provided in the description. 3 new crew members arrived at the International Space Station on Wednesday following their launch in a Soyuz spacecraft from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Russian cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev, Dmitry Petelin, and NASA astronaut Frank Rubio were launched on the Soyuz MS-22 mission at 1:54 p.m. UTC on September 21. It was Prokopiev's second flight into space and the first for Rubio and Petelin. 8 minutes and 45 seconds after liftoff, the Soyuz separated from the rocket's third stage, solar panels unfolded, and the spacecraft set off after the space station. After a 2-orbit 3-hour and 12-minute journey, the spacecraft docked at the Razbit module of the space station. About 2 hours after docking, hatches between the Soyuz and the station opened, and the crew members joined the astronauts on board the space station. They will spend 6 months aboard the orbiting laboratory, undertaking world-class science and research that only the microgravity environment can provide. The arrival of 3 new astronauts to the existing 7 crew members briefly expanded the station's population to 10. Roscosmos cosmonauts Oleg Artemyev, Denis Matveev, and Sergei Korsakov will return to Earth in the Soyuz MS-21 spacecraft on September 29. The Crew Dragon Endurance will launch from Florida 4 days later, bringing 4 Crew 5 members to the orbiting outpost. The NASA Crew 4 astronauts, who have been aboard the space station since April 27, will return to Earth in October. Now, let's discuss some of the major Starship updates from the past week. SpaceX successfully performed a record-breaking 7-engine static fire test of Super Heavy Booster-7 on September 19. Monday's tests began with a 7-engine spin prime test at 10:54 a.m. It was the 9th spin prime test of Booster-7 overall. The test was nearly identical to the 7-engine spin prime test that occurred on September 16. Shortly after the spin prime test, SpaceX refilled Booster-7 with propellant, resulting in a distinct layer of frost around the vehicle. And then, at around 12:47 p.m. local time, the Raptor engines fired. Those engines that ignited for about 8 seconds on Monday afternoon were the same 7 engines involved in the spin prime test that morning. The debris from the test rose higher than the Starship Orbital launch tower and far higher than debris from prior Booster-7 static fire tests. A huge thanks to LabPadre for these awesome views. Following the static fire test on Monday, Elon Musk tweeted that the chamber pressures on all 7 engines looked good. Furthermore, the test set several SpaceX records. It set a new record for the most Raptors lit simultaneously on a single prototype, and it almost certainly beat the record for the highest thrust produced by a vehicle tested at Starbase. On Monday, the 7 Raptor V2 engines of Booster-7 together produced a total thrust of 16.2 meganewtons, which is more than double the total thrust of a Falcon 9 rocket. In a separate tweet on Monday, Musk stated that Booster-7 will return to the high bay for robustness upgrades and Booster-8 will move to the launch pad for testing. He added that the next big Starship test would most likely be a full-stack wet dress rehearsal, followed by 33 engine firing. As Musk tweeted, just hours after Monday's test, teams rolled Super Heavy Booster-8 to the launch site for cryo-proof testing. The booster is yet to receive its 33 engines and 4 grid fins. Booster-7's return to the build site was delayed for a couple of days because SpaceX was busy removing 2 Raptor engines from the prototype. The first engine removed was a center engine, while the second engine removed was an outer engine. Both the engines were sent back to the build site hours later. Teams also installed a new engine in place of the removed outer engine. SpaceX may have found it easier to remove and replace engines on the orbital launch mount than inside the wide bay. On Thursday, September 21, Booster-7 was removed from the orbital launch mount with the help of the launch tower arms. The prototype was later rolled back to the build site for final upgrades and, if necessary, engine replacements before the full-stack tests. Elon Musk gave a short Starship update through a series of tweets on Thursday. Musk said that SpaceX is still planning to use Booster-7 for the first orbital test flight, and they are aiming for late October or early November for the test flight. However, it has to be noted that SpaceX is still awaiting an orbital launch license from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. Musk's predicted timeline will become unattainable if any major issues arise during the upcoming Booster-7 and Ship-24 tests, or if the launch license is delayed. According to Musk, by November, there will be 2 boosters and 2 ships ready for their respective orbital flights. This means Booster-8 and Ship-25 would also be ready for flight by November. Musk says that Super Heavy Booster-9 will sport a lot of design changes. Most importantly, there will be strong shielding to protect the booster engines if one of them explodes during test or flight. He also mentioned that there is some risk involved with Booster-7, as its engine shielding is not as good as the shielding planned for Booster-9. Raptor engines with newly upgraded blast protection shielding were recently spotted at SpaceX's McGregor test facility. Regarding Starship launches from Kennedy Space Center, Musk claims that a launch from Pad 39A will probably happen in the second quarter of 2023. He added that the vehicles for initial flights from Pad 39A will be transferred from Brownsville Port to Cape Canaveral by boat. SpaceX engineers continue to upgrade the orbital launch mount for the 33-engine static fire test. They have recently conducted several launch mount fire and detonation suppression system tests. SpaceX dumps the oxygen used for engine chill underneath the orbital launch mount, and the methane is channeled away from the launch mount through pipes. To avoid the buildup of oxygen, the fire and detonation suppression system will purge the launch mount with high-pressure nitrogen gas and water, effectively cleaning and preventing any volatile mixtures before engine ignition. In this way, SpaceX can avoid anomalies like the one that occurred during the spin prime test of Booster-7 on July 11. A 5-minute-long test of the fire and detonation suppression system was conducted on September 22, and the system appears to be functioning as expected. On Thursday morning, teams lifted and placed a stainless steel cover over the payload bay door of Starship 24. Later it was permanently welded over the payload bay door. So, this means that Ship 24 will not carry any Starlink satellites during orbital test flight. I believe it's a wise choice on SpaceX's part not to risk its valuable cargo on a mission that is less likely to succeed. Starship 25 was fully stacked on September 12, completing the vehicle's primary structure. The ship's aft flaps were recently moved into the high bay for installation. The future of Starship 26 is still up for debate. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned that SpaceX teams have recently removed the thermal protection tiles installed on the nose cone section of Starship 26. At the time, everyone thought that SpaceX was planning to build expendable cargo ships for initial missions due to the enormous complexity and time involved in designing Starship catch points. By building such comparatively less complex expendable ships, SpaceX can deploy the second-generation Starlink constellation as early as possible. However, recent developments suggest that Starship 26 will not carry any payloads on its journey. Typically, the satellite dispenser is installed inside the ship's payload bay before the installation of the 2-header tank downcomers. However, the Ship 26 payload bay section already has header tank downcomers installed, and there is no sign of the satellite dispenser. Furthermore, no hardware to support the payload bay door is visible on the exterior of Ship 26. So, in short, it is currently unclear what SpaceX intends to do with Ship 26. What do you think will be the fate of Ship 26? Let me know in the comments. The Starlink satellite dispenser was installed in the payload bay section of Ship 27 on September 21. The dispenser, which looks like a PEZ dispenser, will deploy Starlink satellites into orbit during the orbital flight of Ship 27. On Thursday morning, the Booster 7.1 test tank and E-Dome test tank were relocated to a SpaceX facility about 9 kilometers away from Starbase, signaling the end of their test campaign. The 7.1 test tank had already passed multiple structural stress tests, however, the E-Dome had never been tested. The drawworks mechanism that will be installed on the Starship launch tower at Pad 39A was recently delivered to the SpaceX facility at Roberts Road. A combination of several sheaves and steel cables connected to the drawworks will lift and lower the rocket's stacking and catching arms through the launch tower. SpaceX will soon start the construction of the mega bay at Roberts Road. The pieces of the structure have already arrived at the site. SpaceX is planning to build a second Starship launch tower at Kennedy Space Center. The tower's horizontal and diagonal framework have also arrived at Roberts Road. However, the exact location of the second launch tower at Kennedy is still unknown. With this, we have covered all the major updates from last week. Please share your thoughts on the latest science news and Starship updates in the comments section. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more weekly updates. And as always, thanks for watching.